What's going on, everybody? Spaceballs here. Welcome back to another Summoners War 2 video. Alright, today we're going to talk about team building, the general basics of it. I'm going to show you my first team when I started playing this game and how I evolved it into the team I'm using now. So let's pull up the formations here and let's talk about some of these teams I have built. And before we talk about the formation here, I want to talk about spells. They play a big role in your team synergy. For example, if I wasn't using Meekin as a cleanse, I'd be using a cleansing spell with this team. If you're using Beretta, you want to use something that has continuous damage, like the spell you see on the top. You want to have the spells synergize with your team. That's always going to work better than just having random spells and then a random formation. So with that being said, let's talk about slot 1. Now, I feel like Ramagos is the best tank in the game currently. I don't think there's many units that can take his place. Now, Rakan would be a good replacement for Ramagos, but again, a lot of us might not have Rakan, and I really do feel like Ramagos is going to be a lot easier for you to level up. And having a level 8 Ramagos, let me tell you, is game-changing. This man has been so good to me, and I basically use him in all of my teams at this point. He has been the best frontline tank I've used so far. Water Golem comes right behind him. He is really good as well. Ramagos can take some hefty damage, and the thing about the number 1 slot is whoever's in the number 1 slot or whoever's first up in line is going to be taking consistent damage. And the beautiful thing about Ramagos is he can take a ton of damage and then dish the damage back to the enemy and heal himself at the same time. That's what makes Ramagos basically the best frontline or number 1 slot unit in the game. And just remember, guys, this is all my opinion. What I've learned, I've been pushing all day. We played for 10 hours today on Twitch. So if we read Ramagos' skill, clean shot, the lower your HP is, the more damage you can deal. And that's what makes Ramagos such a beautiful tank. And I think is always the number 1 choice for the number 1 slot. Now, this is followed up by Water Golem. If my Water Golem was more leveled up, I'd be using him a lot more. Unfortunately, he's only level 3 right now, so I haven't been using him that much. But a really good thing to do here, and I'll show you on another formation, is having Ramagos and Golem. This is going to make your slot 1 and slot 2 very strong and very hard to get through. But if you follow this up with something like a Colleen or a Meekin with constant heals and constant HP balances, and you're clearing all the debuffs, it is going to be close to impossible to take out the Ramagos. Until I pulled all my legendaries, I was using Ramagos and Golem, and they were basically never dying because I was using Colleen and Meekin to constantly keep them healed and constantly balance out the HP. So my Ramagos would make it all the way to the end of the fight about 90% of the time, unless I was outmatched or the team was just better than mine. So you can't cover all sides of the fence. You can only try to do as much as you can. There's always going to be a direct counter to your team. There's nothing you can do about that in a game like this. These matches are strictly PvP based, so every time you sync up, it's like a random fight, and you never know what the opponent's going to bring. He might just be bringing that direct counter. So having a tank in your slot 1 and slot 2 will protect your slot 3 and 4, and it will make it much harder to get to your backline enemies. Now, stuff like a Nikki that's going to hit backline, there is units in this game that do hit just backline, so it's not the perfect answer, but in most cases, having a double tank is going to be much better for you than having squishy units in the front line. Because when I first started playing this game, I noticed my slot 1 would die immediately within like seconds of the fight being started. And then as time goes on, you level up your Ramagos and your Golem. You'll start to notice that you'll be able to keep them alive if you use the right units, as in Meekin, Colleen, Shannon. For example, this team right here is 100% free to play, and that's why I put it up on the screen for you guys. All of these units you get for free except for Megan. And Megan you can replace with Bernard. He's really easy to get because he's a common, and he's probably the best common in the game currently. Maybe not Shannon, and again, Megan you can just change for Bernard. It's the same thing because you have Colleen for the attack buff anyways, so you don't really need Megan to have the attack buff. So for example, we can take out Megan, and then we can put in Bernard. And I would say this team is 100% free to play, and any player can get this team. I'm not sure if they give you Ramagos or not. I don't remember when I started the game what units they started me with, but again, these units are very easy to get because they're rare and commons, and you can use your guild to get these units as well just by summoning in the guild to level up, your current tanks or whatever units you're using that are free to play. So now that we have the slot 1 and 2 covered, we have the slot 3 and 4. What I like to do is either put a healer or a buffer in my slot 3. So for example, we have this team here, Ramagos, Golem, Janine, and Megan. This was the team I was using basically through the whole beginning of the game, except for Copper. I was not using him. I think I was using Kali instead of Copper, and then I was using Meekin instead of Shannon, and then I had Kamoon in my slot 5. We'll talk about slot 5 in just 1 second. So slot 3 should be a support healer, a buffer, a unit that's going to support your team and be able to take consistent damage as well, just in case your tanks go down. You want to make it as hard as you can for your opponent to get to your back line just by doing normal attacks. And having something like a Janine that stuns and heals support your team is a great candidate for your slot 3. Now for my slot 4, I like to go with the support that does buffs. So for example, Megan She does speed buff. She does attack buff. You can also switch her out with something like an Orion. Now, he doesn't do buffs, but he does have good debuffs. He has a stun. He has a card disintegration, which resets the opponent's cards. Now, if you don't like Orion, there's so many other choices, especially free to play. Bernard is always a good choice to put there. Some people like to put Bernard and Megan in the 5th slot, but I feel like if you're using Kamoon, he's the best. Slot 5 is really good for him because even if the enemy gets to your slot 5, Kamoon is another backup healer that does massive damage just like Ramagast. So you kind of look at it as your slot 1. Your slot 5 kind of goes hand in hand with it. So now you have Ramagast, which does big damage and he can take big damage. And then you have Kamoon, which is basically the exact same thing. He can take big damage, but he dishes out big damage. Again, his damage is according to his max HP, and he recovers HP of himself and an ally with the lowest HP proportionate to the damage dealt. So even if the enemy makes it all the way to your slot 5, you're going to have Kamoon, which is just like Ramagast. He's going to be really hard to get through, and he's going to be support healing your team. Now, as far as slot 6, 7, and 8 go, you can go with 3 damage dealers. The last 3 slots are kind of flexible. It's really up to you depending on what kind of team you're using. Now, for this team here, I might even take out Meekin and do something like a Sofa. She has the buff strip and then puts it on the team, which is really strong as well. Sofa would actually be good in the 3 slot or 5 slot as well. For me personally, I would go with something like a Thrain in this team. I'm not a huge fan of like a ton of healers in my team. I know a lot of people do it. So this spell here is just like having a Meekin on your team. If the spell pops in your deck, I have noticed that the spells don't pop as much as the heroes do. But again, if you synergize your cards with your team, you can get away with not using certain healers or buff removers or stunners because you could just replace it with your spells. So having the right spells on the team really makes a huge difference on team synergy and what units you're putting into your team. Now this team here I've been using to clear the campaign. It's been working great. In the campaign, you're going to need a lot of buffs because of the buff that the enemy has. You have to have as many buffs as they have so you can actually deal damage to them. So I found running Shannon, Colleen, and Meekin works really well. And then I use Kali as a solo damage dealer. She does a ton of damage. She one-shots everything. I love my Kali. Sophie as well. She does massive damage. But if you look at every one of my teams here, you can see that we're running basically the same frontline, as in 2 tanks, a support healer, and then some type of healer support or buffer in the slot 4. I want to talk about the Mav and Ramagast combo really quick. It is really OP if you do it properly. If you let Ramagast take a ton of damage and then you switch him with Mav, Ramagast will be in the 2nd slot, so then he won't be targeted. And then you could use Ramagast's clean shot. He will basically full heal himself, one-shot the enemy, and then you could switch Mav and Ramagast back, which will allow Ramagast to take a lot more damage, and then you could just rinse and repeat it. It works great. It's been done on me before. I've seen it work flawlessly. It is something I want to throw out there, a great free-to-play combo, because I do believe you get Mav for free as well. So to sum this up really quick before we talk about the team I'm using now, and I show you all my new legendaries, slot 1 should be a tank always. Slot 2 should be a backup tank or a backup support that can take a ton of damage. Slot 3, in my opinion, should always be some type of healer or support healer. Now, slot 4 is a little more flexible. You can either put a healer here, a healer support, or a buffer. I like to go with buffers 9 times out of 10. Usually Megan is in my 4 slot because she can take good damage. She has the accelerate and attack buff. So she's supporting the team. And if they manage to get through my first 3 slots, Megan can take some nice damage. And if I lose Megan, I'm not really losing too much. I'm just losing the accelerate. But usually at that point, if the enemy's getting into your back line, usually you're getting into their back line, and you guys are really just going damage for damage at that point. So losing Megan in the 4 slot really isn't that bad. Lately, I like to run Megan more towards the back, but early on, running Megan in the 4 slot is not a bad idea. You can also run something like Orion. A buffer would be the dream to back up your support healer and your 2 tanks. Shanna would also be awesome for this spot. I know she's a common, but she would hold this spot really well because she has the defense up, and I think she's one of the few units that actually have it. And she also gives you an attack up. But having the defense buff would be a really good support to your slot 1, 2, and 3. I believe this would be a perfect frontline right here, the one you're looking at. But even better than this, I think the dream frontline would be Golem in place of Mav. So you have Ramagast, Golem, Janine, and Shannon. This would be a really solid frontline to run with, especially as a new player or a free-to-play player. Now, as far as slot 5 goes, again, I think Kamoon fits this slot perfectly because he has the backup heal and he does massive damage just like Ramagast. But if you don't have Kamoon, I'd put a character like Colleen, Raccoony, a hero that is going to support your slot 1, 2, 3, and 4, and also protect your slot 6, 7, and 8, just in case the enemy breaks through your slot 1, 2, 3, and 4. The way I look at my slot 5, it's my last line of hope to stop the enemy from getting to my 3 damage dealers. And then slot 6, 7, and 8, 9 times out of 10, I'm going with 3 damage dealers or damage dealer supports that do stuns and continuous damages. So for example, Thrain in slot 6. Now you could do Sophia in slot 7, or you could even do something like a Beretta. And Thrain and Beretta work very well together because you have the stuns and the dots. Then you can run a dot and stun card as well. And that will actually allow you to open up your slot 6, because then you could take out Lapis. And in slot 6, you can run another healer support. So let's say, for example, you can put Colleen in the slot 6, or you can put Raccoony. Because if you're running a dot team, you don't need as much damage in your last 3 slots. But if you're going straight DPS in your last 3 slots, and you're not worrying about dots, then you want to have 3 damage dealers in those spots. But if you're going to run dots, you only need 2 dotters, and then you can use the dotting card. It's really up to you and based on the team synergy that you want to use. But a team like this would work great, to be honest, because you have the dots from Beretta. The thing you have to be careful with Beretta is everybody's using Lapis now, especially myself. Lapis has soloed so many matches for me by herself because so many people use Beretta and Kamoon, and Lapis is a direct counter to it. So for me personally, I like to run Lapis in my slot 8. That's just where I'm at right now, or at least where I'm at in the game. Lapis seems to work the best for me. Now, to show you my current team and what I'm using now, in slot 1, we have a Ramagod. We're going to call him Ramagod because he's that good. Then in my slot 2, I moved Janine. My slot 3, I now have Poseidon. He's a great tank and he has deceleration. Deceleration in this game is super strong. Poseidon is a S tier unit in this game. Let me tell you, he's been carrying me. And then I was lucky enough to pull Artemil. He's a great slot 4 unit because he's a tank and he has a buff strip and he does massive damage. And he also protects my back line. Slot 5, I went with Megan because she has the buffs. She will also protect my Kali, my Dragonite, and my Lapis, just in case they get through my front line. And having Megan in the 5th slot here allows me to keep the Accelerate up for as long as I can. And the Accelerate synergizes with my Poseidon's deceleration. So running those 2 together allows me to take a ton of turns and speeds my team up tremendously. And then again, in my last 3 slots, I am running 3 damage dealers. Dragonite, I wasn't happy about him, and then I pulled a dupe of him, and now he's doing really well for me. He's not that great of a unit, but he works good in the right team synergy. I basically use him as a sniper now for Lucian teams and Beretta teams. So whenever I see a Beretta, I use the Dragonite to snipe out the Beretta or the Lucian. And then we have Kali in slot 7. Kali is amazing. She does a ton of damage. She one-shots everything. I love Kali. I had her out of my team. I put her back in. I don't think I'll ever take her out at this point. And she's easy to level up because they give you a ton of free copies of Kali. And again, Lapis is the dream. If you guys don't have her, I'm sorry, but Lapis is absolutely amazing in this game. I don't know if they did that because she was a starter unit in Summoner's War, but in Summoner's War 2, she is triple S tier, especially because she's a direct counter to those Beretta teams, and basically everybody is running a Beretta team at this point. Now, just keep in mind, guys, there is no perfect team. There's always going to be a counter out there to the team that you're using. You'll never have a flawless victory going up to the top. I promise you that. There's always going to be someone out there that's using a counter to your team, or their team is just higher level than yours and they're just going to outrank you. There's nothing you could do about that. So don't worry about making a perfect team. Just stick to what we talked about in this video, and I promise you your team will work fine. That is going to wrap it up for this one. If you guys want to add anything to this, please go down in the comments and add on. I love to hear your feedback. I love to hear what you guys have to say. We're going to be starting a new sub celebration once we hit 3,000 subs, and we are super close. If you want to be a part of the random giveaway that we do here on YouTube, all you have to do is sub to the channel, like, and comment on my past 10 videos, and that will automatically enter you into the random giveaway. If you want to join me on Twitch and Discord, those are linked down below. We do 2 monthly giveaways on Discord, random giveaways on Twitch. Plus, we're going to be doing the follower celebration on Twitch this week. So if you want to be a part of that, make sure you go down to the link, follow the Twitch so you know when I go live, and then you won't miss out on the giveaway. I truly do love each and every single one of you. I will see you in the next one. Spaceballs out. Peace.